Pleased to introduce our first international poet singer, Vladimir Frumkin. Vladimir graduated in musicology from the Leningrad Conservatory and then later taught music theory there. He was a much published writer on music and literary topics, and also a popular Soviet TV and radio host before he immigrated to the United States in 1974. He at present lives in Ohio with his wife and daughter and teaches Russian language and drama at Oberlin College. Tonight he will be singing a selection of Russian folk and political protest songs. Following this concert, Guy and Candy Carawan will be giving a performance of American folk, lyric and social protest songs. I'll leave you to construct your own symbolic connections between the two shows. Now please help me welcome Vladimir Frumkin.
I'd like to introduce to you today a few examples of contemporary Russian culture, of independent Russian culture. This somewhat unusual creative current rose in the second half of the 50s, after the death of Stalin. It was a brief period of liberalization in the Soviet Union. And it was a very careful liberalization, I would say. Of course, a great number of very significant novels, plays, movies, and so on were produced at that time. But even then, you couldn't express yourself with complete freedom. There's only one place in the Soviet Union where you can be yourself. It's your home, or the home of your close friends. And there, at home, you can discuss almost openly political and social problems. You can read samizdat, which is self-publication, typed material, underground literature. You can look at the paintings of nonconformist artists. You can hear a poet read his works. There were even 2 unofficial theaters in Moscow, in small communal apartments where unauthorized plays were performed. But let's return to poetry, because it's our topic today. Can you hear me there?
Yeah.
Yes? I can speak louder. Yes. Okay. I said that the poet reads his poems at these informal gatherings. It happens, but more often you will hear a poet not reciting but singing his poetry. For several reasons, it's more natural, more effective to sing a poem for such nice circle of people. Of course, usually it's in a very small audience, 5 for 15 people, small Soviet apartment. It's more natural to sing than to recite a poem. Let me give you an example. For instance, you invited your good friend Bob Dylan or Paul Simon to your dorm and ask him to show some of his works. And I think that these guys are good poets. They're not only excellent musicians, and they could do it like that. I am sitting in the railway station, got a ticket to my destination. I think that in a couple of minutes you would say, Paul, dear, stop it. Take your guitar and play. When you sing, you don't sound as formal. You don't perform in front of people. You sing for them as though you were singing for yourself. I remember there's a wonderful poetess in Moscow, Novella Matveyeva. And Once I brought some friends to her apartment and asked her to, she, during the war, she was very ill. There was a famine, and she's still not well. She wasn't feeling well, and I asked her to read her poems for my friends, and she said, I don't want to impose myself on them. I will take my guitar and go into the corner and sing for myself. And if they want, they will listen. And it's much more natural, to sing in this social situation, in a room with your untrained voice. And the singing creates a subtle illusion, while seemingly nonchalant, pleasant entertainment, it really captures and commands your attention. And it makes the poem more accessible to the listener. At any rate, in the late 50s and early 60s, several Russian poets, professional poets, simply took up guitar playing and began to sing their poetry at informal gatherings. That's how a new genre started, which had never before existed in Russia. France, this is a classical country for a figure, a poet with a guitar, a Béranger in the first half of the previous century, but not Russian. And suddenly it occurred in Russia. What shall we call this genre form? A song? Maybe, but the concept of a popular song is inadequate for many of these works because the text is the most significant element here. Music serves as a background for the words. It adds new colors. It's an emotional, aesthetic accompaniment which surrounds beautiful poetry. When I came to the West 11 years ago, I learned another term. By the way, we could better call this genre guitar poetry or musical poetry, sang poetry, and something like that. And I learned here another term, magnetizdat. It's analogous to samizdat. Samizdat, self-publication. Magnetophone. It's a tape recorder. It's a publication by tape recorder. And thanks to such tape recorders, these works, written freely and checked over neither by editors nor by censors, spread through the country with amazing speed. It's a real voice of our generation, not censored voice of contemporary Soviet generation. What is the attraction of this sound poetry? It's impossible to understand it and to appreciate it without realizing the predominant, musical atmosphere of the Soviet Union. Let me play for you on the magnetophone. First, an example of Soviet official music. March of the Enthusiasts. You ready? You'll be indoctrinated in a minute. I'll make you believe in it. Okay, go. I pushed the wrong. I'm sorry. Achtung! Attention. Guess, when was it written? The March of the Enthusiasts. It's happy, beautiful song. The melody is beautiful. And the refrain goes like that. I'll give you a translation. There are no barriers for us. Either on land or sea. The flame of our souls, the banner of our country will carry through the universe and ages. When was this song written? In the late 30s, in 1938, at the peak of the Great Terror. And this was a typical song written by the most talented composer of that time, Isaac Dunayevsky. Such songs flooded Russia during the terror, and they made a tremendous influence on our emotions. We were in a state of schizophrenia. We didn't know what to believe, and we tended to believe these songs more than reality. They were so convincing, so beautiful, so warm. But what appeared afterwards, after the death of Stalin, was also warm, but in its own way. Just the beginning of a song written in 1957, soon after the death of Stalin and the 20th Congress, by Bulata Kutshava. By the way, it's informal gathering, like in the Soviet Union in a small apartment. Please don't be so silent. I'm nervous when you know. The midnight trolley, yes. The Great Terror or Purge. Would you like me to give a lecture on that topic? It started in the actual Great Terror. First was collectivization, forced collectivization of farmers, which started in 1929, where about 15 million perished, mostly peasants. And then in 1934 was the second next wave of terror, which ended in 1939, before the war. This terror, there are no exact figures of victims, but altogether, for during Stalin's years, including the war, 20 million, about 62 million people died. Когда мне не вмочь пересилить беду, когда подступает отчаяние, я в синий троллейбус сажусь на ходу, последний, случайный. Я в синий троллейбус сажусь на ходу. подобрать потерпевших ночи крушение. Midnight Trolley. When I haven't. No, it's not. It's not in your list. When I get the strength to miss my misfortune, to this beyond. Rush. Pick up all those who were shipwrecked in the night. In the night. And it's the beginning of the song. It was written by Bulat Akutjala, and this is the founder of this guitar poetry movement. He lives in Moscow. He's a well-known, a famous writer and a poet and a living legend. Millions of people know his songs, although many of them haven't been published yet. His first record was released in Paris in the 60s. His first Soviet record was published in 1926 only. Bulat grew up in Moscow. Akutjala is a Georgian name. His father was a well-known Georgian communist. His mother was Armenian. And it's a very strange combination of the Soviet Union. Armenian and Georgian, strange. But there were communist idealists. In 1937, Bulat's father was arrested and executed as a German and Japanese spy. And his mother spent about 18 years in prisons and camps. But Bulat remained a patriot. He believed that his parents were enemies, so to speak, враги народа, enemies of the people. And in 1941, when he was only 17, when the Second World War started, he went as a volunteer to the front, and he was badly wounded there. And after the war, he graduated from a university in Tbilisi, in Georgia, in the Russian language and literature, by the way. And then he began to write poetry, and he became famous when he began to sing his poetry for his friends. Let me sing for you one of his anti-war songs. It's called Song of an American Soldier. May I take off my... Okay, where is the wine? Sorry.
Take it off.
I'll stop. I'll take my gray coat, my knapsack, and my helmet, all dyed in camouflage colors. I'll beat out my step along the crooked streets. How simple to become a soldier. I'll forget all my home troubles. I don't need pay or a job. I stroll along playing with my machine gun. How simple to be a soldier. And if anything seems wrong, it's not our business. Like they say, our motherland gave the orders. Родина велела. How great to be absolutely blameless, just a simple soldier, a soldier. Why American then? It was a trick. The poet Evgeny Yevtushenko, then Abujawa's friend, suggested him this title in order to get it through the censorship. It didn't help. Everybody in the Soviet Union understands that this is, first of all, about the Soviet soldier.
Возьму в шинели вещь, мешок и каску, защитную окрашенную краску, ударю шаг по улочкам горбатым, как просто стать солдатом, солдатом. Ударю шаг по улочкам горбатым, как просто стать солдатом, солдатом. Забуду все домашние заботы, не нужно ни зарплаты, ни работы. Иду себе, играю автоматом, как просто быть солдатом, солдатом. Иду себе, играю автоматом, как просто быть солдатом, солдатом. А если что не так, не наше дело, как говорится, Родина велела, как славно быть ни в чем не виноватым, совсем простым солдатом, солдатом. Как славно быть ни в чем не виноватым, совсем простым солдатом, солдатом.
Now a very different song of a blue balloon, and it is there. It's very difficult even for a Russian to give a prosaic interpretation of this song. It's a complex idea of life, human life, life of a woman. The girl is crying, she has her own problem, then the little girl, and then girl, a woman, and an old woman. And the blue balloon comes back, and it's turned out to be light blue, and this is the color of a hope and a poetic dream.
Девочка плачет, шарик улетел, ее утешают, а шарик летит. Девушка плачет, жениха все нет, ее утешают, а шарик летит. Женщина плачет, ушел другой, ее утешают, а шарик летит. Плачет старушка, мало пожила, а шарик вернулся.
A couple of songs written by Vladimir about an artist, a poet living in a strange, somewhat repressive society. An old organ grinder's song. Do you have it? Again, it's a metaphor an old organ grinder, it's a sort of poet, or a poet in any similar society. Street organ in Russian is charmanka. It comes from French. There was a very popular French song in the 18th century, Charmante Catherine, accompanied by a street organ. And it came to Eastern Europe, and in Poland and in Ukraine, the instrument is called Katarinka, from Katrin, and Russians call it Sharmanka, from Sharman. So you hear Sharmanka, Charlatanka, oh, street organ charlatan. Please sing with me. I can teach you if we only had time.
Шарманка, шарлатанка, как сладко ты поешь. Шарманка, шарлатанка, куда меня зовешь? Шагаю еле-еле, вершок опять иду. Как дойти до цели, когда ботинки жмут? Работа есть работа, работа есть всегда. Хватило б только года на все мои года. Расплата за ошибки, она ведь тоже труд. Хватило бы улыбки, когда под ребра бьют. Работа есть работа, работа есть всегда.
Unfinished song. He's walking away with his charmanta. I'm writing a historical novel. Blagojava wrote this poem, first as a poem, instead of an article which was commissioned by one of literary journals in Moscow. And the journal didn't publish it, probably because of the refrain. You will see it. Everyone tell it, read it in English.
Everyone hears what he breathes, so he writes like he breathes, not trying to please anyone. That's how he reminded us why it's none of our business, what for it's not for us.
Склянки темного стекла, из-под импортного пива роза красная цвела, гордо и неторопливо. Исторический роман сочинял я понемногу, пробиваясь как в туман от пролога к эпилогу. Каждый пишет, что он слышит, каждый слышит, как он дышит, так и пишет, не стараясь угодить. Так природа захотела, почему не наше дело, для чего не нам судить? Были дали голубы, было вымысла в избытке и собственной судьбы. Я выдергивал по нитке, путь героев снаряжал, наводил о прошлом справки и поручиком поставки сам себя воображал. Каждый пишет, как он дышит, так и пишет, не стараясь угодить. Так природа захотела, почему не наше дело, для чего не нам судить? Вымысел не есть обман, замысел еще не точка, дайте дописать роман до последнего листочка, и пока еще жива роза красная в бутылке, дайте выкрикнуть слова, что еще лежат в копилке. Каждый пишет, что он слышит, каждый слышит, как он дышит.
A song about a woman, about love. It's important to understand the context, cultural context of the love songs written by Vladimir and other Soviet poets of that generation. He said once, for a long time, we almost never sang about love. And in the very word of woman, there was something rather dubious. In protest against this falseness and puritanical hypocrisy, I dared for the first time in many years to glorify woman in Russian as something sacred, to fall before her on my knees. The song is called Sing Glory to My Woman, or here it's called Song of the Blue Beacons, о синих маяках. It's like a застольная песня, a table song or a drinking song. But the table is 7 C's, as you see in the translation.
Не бродяги, не пропойцы, за столом семи морей. Вы пропоете славу женщине моей. Вы пропоете славу женщине моей. Вы в глаза ее взгляните, как в спасение свое. Вы сравните с близким берегом ее. Вы сравните с близким берегом ее. Вы земных землей и вовсе к черту сказки о богах. Просто мы на крыльях носим то, что носят на руках. Просто мы на крыльях носим то, что носят на руках. Просто нужно очень верить этим синим маякам, и тогда нежданный берег из тумана выйдет к вам, и тогда нежданный берег из тумана выйдет к вам. Не бродяги, не пропойцы, за столом семи морей. Вы пропоете славу женщине моей. Вы пропоете славу женщине моей.
On April's duty, on April, дежурный по апрелю. It's a metaphor of being in love. I'm standing in love. And it's conversation, it's a lovely conversation with the worried mother and her son.
Ах, какие удивительные ночи, только мама моя в грусти и тревоге. Что же ты гуляешь, мой сыночек, одинокий, одинокий? Что же ты гуляешь, мой сыночек, одинокий, одинокий? И с конца в конец апреля удержу я. Стали звезды крупнее и добрее. Мама, мама, это я дежурю, я дежурный по апрелю. Мама, мама, это я дежурю, я дежурный по апрелю. Мой сыночек, вспоминаю все, что было. Стали грустными глаза твои, сыночек. Ведь, может быть, она тебя забыла. Знать не хочет, знать не хочет. Может быть, она тебя забыла. Знать не хочет, знать не хочет. И с конца в конец апреля удержу я. Стали звезды крупнее и добрее. Что ты, мама, просто я дежурю, я дежурный по апрелю. Что ты, мама, просто я дежурю, я дежурный по апрелю.
Now I'd like to make an experiment, an aesthetic experiment with you. I'll be a sociologist and musicologist for a minute or two or three. It's a paradox, but usually when this unofficial, underground or sometimes semi-underground guitar poetry is compared to the Soviet variety of song, it's usually said that these songs outclass the official songs in its words, in the poetic sphere. And it's true. The poetry is, it's a pity that you don't understand Russian as well as I understand. But because the translations are, it's a very, very far away from the actual original. But I would like to point out that the feeling for truth, the talent of these poet-singers are also evident in their music, in their tone, and their intonation. On the other hand, they are not professionals. They are professionals in poetry. By the way, there are many amateurs which followed their steps. Akudjava, Galич, Novella Matveyeva, Vladimir Vysotsky, they are professionals, professional poets. And also, you hear many amateurs, also popular in the Soviet Union. They are amateurs both in poetry and in music. But I'm talking today about the central figures of this movement. And they are, they don't know even how to write down their own music. They're absolutely without education, without formal education. But they have talent, musicality, inborn musicality probably. And let me show you an example. One Soviet composer gave us an opportunity to compare and contrast the two styles, two aesthetics, maybe two ideologies even. Matvey Blanter, a Soviet composer, classical composer of of mass song. Wrote 5 songs to the poems of Bulata Kuchava. And he did it intentionally. He chose not the poems without music. Kuchava writes plain, pure poetry as well. But he chose the poems already well known with Akuchava's own melodies. And I knew Vladimir personally. He once said to me, "I'll show those poets, singers, those complete amateurs how to write music. You know, who do they think they are interfering, in other people's business writing songs?" And he wrote 5 songs, and I'll play for you first Akuchava's own performance, just a couple of initial stanzas. The song is called "The Old Jacket." You don't have it here, right? No. Старый пиджак in Russian. For many years I've worn this jacket. It's long been tattered and torn. And so I called for the tailor and asked him to mend it for me. Jokingly, I tell him, "Sew the whole thing a new way, so your skill at cutting and sewing may bring good fortune to me." I was joking, but he takes the jacket so seriously and worries all day long that something will turn out wrong. What a character. He's only got one concern in all his silent zeal, that I look happy in that old jacket while I'm alive. He pictures it this way: as soon as I try on my jacket, I'll believe in your love again. And that just couldn't be. What a character. Okay, offer your own interpretation. Mr. Carroll, Guy, what kind of music would you write to these lines? Of course, you don't know the original. Okay, no suggestions. Is it a slow or a bouncy song? Okay, let's listen to Akuchava's interpretation. His voice.
Я много лет пиджак ношу, давно потерся и не новый. И я зову к себе портного и перешить пиджак прошу. Я говорю ему, шутя, перекроите все иначе. Сулит мне новые удачи. Искусство кройки шитья. Я пошутил,
Without last stanza, you would be right. Without last, and they noticed that the end of the poem is sad. Sad, it's a philosophical thing. You can't. The idea of this poem probably is that it's impossible to be happy if you change only your environment, if you remake your jacket, or it's only a metaphor, because you can't. It's much more difficult to change your fate. to change yourself. And the undertone of this, yeah, the rhythm is bouncing. Я много лет пиджак ношу, if you read it. Yeah. Давно потерся и не новым, тадам, пабам, young, very free. И я зову к себе портного, lovely dialogue between the tailor and the poet. Okay, let's write that there. And now listen to one of the most popular Soviet singers, Edward Hill. I knew him very well, and he's a nice guy, but he's once he confessed, before I invited him for a discussion on television in Leningrad about problems of our mass music. He said, I'll tell them. I'm tired. I feel like my smile froze on my face. From those heavy Soviet songs. But during the discussion, it was live. He didn't say that, unfortunately. But listen to his interpretation with blunter music. A handsome guy with a happy smile, accompanied by a little orchestra.
Я много лет пиджак ношу, давно потерся и не нов. И я зову к себе портного и перешить пиджак хочу. Я говорил ему, шутя, перекроите все иначе, сулит мне новые удачи, искусство кройки и житья.
This music is good. This music is excellent. If you don't sing these lines. Matvey Blunter created many beautiful songs. Расцветали яблони и груши, поплыли туманен рекой, выходила на Катюша на высокий берег крутой. Or the same composer wrote, I think, the best or one of the best songs of Stalin. Сталин наша слава боевая, Сталин нашей юности полет, с песнями борясь и побеждая, наш народ за Сталиным идет. It's the refrain of the song, written in the late 30s. But after Stalin died, he decided to change the topic and to change the poetry, and he chose Akujava. He wanted to be more appealing to the new generation. But he got used to a plain poetry, poetry with one level, and he didn't know how to read a more complex poetry. And this is the problem of the officially trained Soviet composers. So now, these amateurs in music are much more popular among well-educated Soviets. And not only well-educated. For instance, Vladimir Vysotsky, a famous actor of the theater on Taganka in Moscow, who unfortunately died at the age of 42 a few years ago. He's popular. Millions and millions of people sing his songs and play his songs on the tape recorder. Let me introduce to you another songwriter, Alexander Gadich. Gadich was a well-established playwright and author of movie scripts and a poet. And in the beginning of the 60s, he began to write his songs with the guitar. And these songs were very different from Akujava's. Very different. If Akujava could be called a romantic, a lyrical poet, so Galić is probably a realist. And he's a great master of satire, and his satires are very often bitter and tragic. Galić was expelled from the country in 1974, and he died in Paris in 1977 in a bizarre and tragic accident. I would like to play for you a song. It's a satirical but more humorous than tragic, of course. It's a song, it's a ballad of conscientiousness, or a ballad of a model Soviet citizen. His name is Yegor Petrovich Maltsev, and he's seriously ill. He has diabetes, and his life is leaking out of his fingers, veins, and other members too, and he can't eat or drink anything, and he sees a strange dream. In a brightly lit hall lies Yegor amid and banners. He sees a huge portrait of himself on the wall, and he feels more dead than alive. And suddenly, the Red Army chorus sings over him. Are you familiar with the Red Army chorus? Sings over him, "Get up, Yegor, get up. Stand proud and tall, don't let your country down. The central newspaper has announced that there is no more diabetes in the Soviet Union." Yegor, of course, gets up and goes home, and in his newly washed underwear, he marches around the square, cholesterol melting in his blood, and he's alive and well and can eat candies and soda pop and you name it. And the closing phrase, only under the Soviet regime this thing would get. No, only could get through. Yeah, I think. Yeah. Only лишь при советской власти такое может быть. Be possible, yes. Or could come true. Егор Петрович Мальцев хворает и всерьез, уходит жизнь из пальцев, уходит из желез. Из прочих членов тоже уходит жизнь его, и в скорости, похоже, не будет ничего. В большом красивом зале, резоном вопреки, лежит Егор, а сзади знамена и венки, и алым светом сад, большой его портрет, и сам Егор не знает, живой он или нет. Он смаргивает может, как смаргивал живой, но он прощать не может, при этом головой. И дух по залу столкий, как в общей душевой, и он скорее мертвый, чем все ж таки живой. Но хором над Егором, распространенным хором, распространенным хором поет: вставай, Егор, Петрович, во всю свою длину. Вставай, Егор Петрович, не подводись к тому. И сел товарищ, центральная газета оповестила свет, что в общем диабета в стране советской нет. Пойми, что с этим хочешь, нельзя позавечать. Пойми, что ты позоришь родимую печать. Давай, вставай, Петрович, во всю свою длину. Давай, вставай, Петрович, не подводись к роду. И сел товарищ Мальцев, слышав эту речь, и жизнь его из пальцев не стала больше течь. Его тузы стирать, он пойду застелил, и тает, тает, тает в крови холестерин. По площади по крупной идет он милый круг, и все ему доступно, что видеть он вокруг.
доступно кушать сласти и газировку пить. Лишь при советской власти такое может быть.
Thank you very much. Do you have questions? Yeah.
I was wondering, could you tell something about Bukowski, or what his impact on the Soviet Union has been, maybe? I don't know.
Bukowski is one of the most courageous dissidents of the Soviet Union. He's in the West, a biologist, Stanford University, and his example made a tremendous impact on many Soviet people. We found out about him through the Voice of America, BBC, and other voices. Because in the Soviet newspapers you could find that he was a hooligan, a wonderful Russian word. It was and also he was crazy. They put him twice into special mental hospital prison. And he spent, I think, 12 years of his life in prisons and camps. And he was exchanged for Louis Carvalan, as you may know, General Secretary of the Communist Party of Chile. And he wrote, in the West, he wrote several books, interesting books. I don't agree with everything that he writes, but he's very sharp, very smart, and very knowledgeable. I remember he came once to Oberlin and gave a presentation. It was a discussion. He made a statement and then he took questions. And he was very glad that there were several people, I would say about 15 people from the Spartacus League. Are you familiar with this organization? Lucky you. Young radicals. They call themselves Trotskyites. They were against solidarity, for instance, in Poland. They were going around. We have only, I think, one student, a member of this group, but others come from Cleveland, and just only 40 miles from Oberlin. Yeah, they were brandishing, slogans like "Crash Solidarity." They want to restore capitalism in Poland. Let's invite the Soviet army to invade Poland and stop solidarity. Not like that. They were very happy when the Soviet army invaded Afghanistan. And Bukowski was very happy that they were there and asked questions. And he just, he blew them away. More questions? Yeah.
You're contrasting professionals and amateurs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, did you mean professional in the commercial sense?
Yes, and not only in the commercial sense. By the way, it's a good question, because this guitar poetry has nothing to do with money. They don't earn anything for that, as a rule. The only trouble. It's a completely non-commercial movement. But it's also important to emphasize that in the sphere of music, these poets are amateurs, professionals. They weren't enrolled in any conservatory courses, but they're more appealing. The tone is different. The tone, they use the melodies, the tunes, or the styles which are free of that Soviet flavor, of that official bombastic tone. I can tell you an excellent topic for a dissertation. Two worlds, two intonations, or two tones. You know, it's an extremely interesting topic. People express themselves differently in different societies. Have you ever heard Brezhnev talking, giving his speeches?
Дорогие товарищи, сегодня мы отмечаем великий день.
Да. And not only party officials, but in all spheres, in all official spheres. One of my cultural surprises was the voices of your announcers, radio and TV journalists. They talk like human beings. They joke, they improvise, they talk to each other. You know, the Soviet anchorman, you know. Even about the weather green faces. Tomorrow we expect a beautiful weather. May I tell you a political joke about Brezhnev? Russian students will, and you speak Russian, right? Polish, but your face is, you know, very smart. Yeah, I mean, your reaction was, you know, very accurate. It sounds. Yeah, so, and you'll understand, everybody will understand. Brezhnev, before his death, with an important speech for a party congress, he starts like that. Dear, дорогие товарищи империалисты всех стран. Dear comrades imperialists of all countries. And silence, confusion, here, once again. Дорогие товарищи империалисты всех стран. Dear comrades imperialists of all countries. His advisor comes, you know, close and shows him, come. Дорогие товарищи империалисты всех стран. Dear comrades, imperialists of all countries. In terms of tone, our bards and minstrels use styles which were abandoned by Soviet music, Soviet mass music. It's a 19th century, first of all, music of democratic circles, of students. Lots of Russian students, you know, intonations are inherited here. And lyrical, melancholy Russian songs, and dance songs, and gypsy romance, for instance. Gypsy, or sometimes it's called cruel, жестокий romance, cruel romance. For instance, in this song, «Не бродяги, не пропойцы, за столом сидим». If you listen carefully, and if you are, it's a Russian gypsy, a little bit, you know, similar to «Очи черные, очи страстные, очи жгучие и прекрасные, как люблю я вас, как боюсь я вас, знать увидела вас, я бы не должен». But Akujava has a taste, you know, and his songs don't have this, you know, schmaltz. But the, you know, the origin of the melodies are there. You know, also street musicians, organ grinders, everything of criminal world, of even this. Mama, это я дежурю. It will be played in a vulgar way and become a blатная песня, a song of the Russian Soviet underworld. Yeah. So they borrow from the spheres which are completely forbidden or abandoned by the Soviet official aesthetics. So who wants to write a dissertation on two intonations, two systems? Okay, we'll talk about it. More questions, please. Yes?
I was wondering, what effect does Western music have on both the official music in the Soviet Union and then more of the dissident or underground type music?
What about jazz?
Jazz is, I think, much more popular in the Soviet Union now than in the United States. It was kind of my disappointment. I dreamed of coming to the United States and listening, any wave, in the radio station, beautiful jazz. It's difficult to find on the radio good American jazz. But in the Soviet Union, it's a tremendous hunger for good jazz, for rock music. It goes like that. Teenagers are in love of American and English rock music. Just they are met, they form their own groups, they try to get money in order to buy instruments. It's almost impossible to buy officially, to come by electric guitars and drums and everything like that. So they go, they get it on a black market. And so between 14 and 18, 19, rock music, then jazz, and this guitar poetry, a more serious genre, or something poetic, political, lyrical, and so on. American folk music is also extremely popular. Your songs, they're ready to pay up to 70 rubles for one record. Bear it in mind when you go to the Soviet Union. It's more than $100 for one record. And in the classical music, of course, 12-tone system, sonorism, Schoenberg, Hindemith, they are very important examples for the new generation of Soviet composers. If you have more questions, please go ahead. Yes. Translated.
Vladimir Vysotsky. Was Vladimir Vysotsky a dissident?
Vladimir Vysotsky, the actor who, who wrote 600 songs. No, he wasn't a political dissident. No, but he was a cultural figure which stood out far away from the official Soviet style, and his topics and the tone of his songs, and the language, very simple, lots of slang, which is absolutely impossible, would be absolutely impossible in the official sphere, made him an unwanted author. He was very popular among even the Soviet elite, but they listened to him secretly, as they did the songs even of Garbage, Alexander Garbage, political, critical songs. The elite enjoys these songs, but in a secret way. I think openly they punish the authors or the possessors of the tapes, but secretly they just, it's a perversion, I think. It's a perverted pleasure for them to listen about themselves. He's true, he's right. He's right. Здорово, huh? If you don't have questions, yeah.
Do you consider yourself a dissident?
No. I'm a normal person. No.
I fell in love with these songs. I was a sort of absolutely normal musicologist in 17. I wrote my dissertation about symphonies of Dmitri Shostakovich. I was a specialist in classical forms. And in the beginning of the 60s, I was introduced to these songs, and nobody, okay, let's be proud a little bit. I'm proud that I was the first professional who began to analyze, investigate, and promote these songs. Yeah. But I did it not of any political reasons. I felt that it would be dangerous. Yes, I met all of them. All these writers, including Garbage, were my friends, my close friends. And of course, it was dangerous to visit them, especially Garbage. Especially when I went to dinner. Garbage used to live in Moscow, and I was very happy to meet Sakharov, academician Sakharov, through Garbage. We had dinner together. Sakharov, who is now in exile, the father of Soviet hydrogen bomb. He came with his wife, Dr. Elena Bonner, and we had dinner, and it was a very nice. By the way, I played for Sakharov. Mozart на старенькой скрипке играет, Моцарт играет, а скрипка поет. Моцарт отечество не выбирает, просто играет всю жизнь напролет. It's Amadeus, song of Mozart written by Vladimir. It was a new song, and Sakharov didn't know it, and I played here. And suddenly, Sakharov came up to the window and said, "Okay, this car is still here. What kind of car?" Oh, I couldn't find a taxi when I was going to dinner, and I noticed the black Volga KGB car watching for me, and I asked them, "Could you give me a ride, please?" I'm going to visit college. Do you know his address? Of course, we know it. And he said, "Probably I'll ask them to take me home." Yes,
I think we probably are all in agreement here. We don't like oppressive conditions like this, and we like human beings to be able to create and have a chance to hear their creations be heard in an open society. But I would like to know what your suggestions would be for people to be able to learn to understand how these oppressive conditions developed. And also, would Russia be better today if we were just still under the Tsar? And did America have anything to do with while the Soviets were experimenting to try to start a new system, aside from the old Tsarist Russia? Is it true that a lot of nations ganged up on and tried to destroy what was being done by the revolution, so that people had to be closed-minded? Or how do people go at how do we interpret what you're saying up there? You say you hate that country for being the way it is, or and would it be just better if this whole movement had never started, and that we just still had good old Tsarist Russia? Or what was it like then?
Let's not forget that there were 3 revolutions in Russia in the 20th century. First, in 1905, a democratic revolution, which forced the Tsar to start a democratic process. It was only in an embryonic form. Duma, the embryo of a parliament was established. And Russia, economically and socially, was moving ahead. During 10 years before the First World War, it was the most rapidly developing country. But the elite was too slow, too conservative, too reactionary. They didn't want to move faster, a little bit faster, and to
establish first a constitutional monarchy. It would be a much more natural way for Russia to develop democracy. But the First World War interrupted this process, and the stubbornness of the Tsar also prevented it to happen, a natural evolutionary type development. And then the war devastated Russia. The Russian people didn't want anyone to live under such a stubborn and conservative government. So, February Revolution of 1917 erupted, and Russia, even in Lenin's words, became the most free and democratic country in the world. But this time they moved too fast. The masses were absolutely uneducated politically. They didn't know how to vote, how to participate in a democratic process, and anarchy evolved in Russia. And in this situation, the most well-organized former underground party of the Bolsheviks were able to take command, power, and it was a tragedy. I think the natural process of the Russian history was interrupted by a well-organized fanatics who were to impose a utopia, a Marxist-Leninist utopia in a big country. And when utopias may sound well, but when you try to implement it in practice, it develops into something very opposite. It was a tragedy that in this troubled time, Bolsheviks conquered the minds of Russian people. During the Civil War, the majority supported the Bolsheviks. But very soon, the peasants realized what they did, and numbers of uprisings happened. First, the Kronstadt sailors was a tremendous uprising in 1921, and then in Siberia, in the European part, lots of peasants uprisings, but it was too late, and then collectivization followed, and so I think it's a tragedy. It could be compared with the tragedy of German people, which happened in 1933-34, when Hitler was just elected as a chancellor of Germany. Also in the time of trouble, when weak democracy, Weimar Republic, couldn't manage the situation. And it was attacked from the right by the Nazis and from the left by the communists. And Stalin helped Hitler, actually, to take lead, because he made the communists and socialists in Germany communists vote against socialist candidates. So Hitler won the majority. Stalin helped him. Yes.
These songs that you love so much, have they made it into film in the Soviet Union or in the West?
Film?
Have the songs that you love so much that you play and all that, have they made it into Soviet or Western films?
In Yugoslavia, about 12 years ago, a movie was made with a central, what do you call it, theme song, right? Of Akutjava, a prayer of François Villon, a French poet of the 16th century. Пока земля еще не пуста,
пока еще я расцвет. Господи, дай же ты каждому, чего у него нет. Мудрому дай голову, трусливому дай коня, дай счастливому тени и не забудь про меня. This song was used by in Yugoslavia. Some of the songs like Vysotsky, Akujava are included in the Soviet visual movies, and an excellent movie on Vladimir Vysotsky was produced in Denmark. Poet Vladimir Vysotsky, or World Vladimir. It was shown last year on PBS, Public American Television, in the Inside Story by Harding Carter. Harding Carter. Yeah. He added some of his own materials, and it's an excellent documentary about Vladimir Vysotsky. It was, unfortunately, it was done. He started. Samuel Ratke is the author of this movie. He was born, by the way, in Moscow, in Siberia, in the camp, and then he went to Denmark because his parents were there. He started shooting the movie in the day of the funeral of Vysotsky. So the whole movie, almost the whole movie, is a reflection of Soviet people in the streets on Vladimir Vysotsky. I'm sorry that I didn't bring. I have a cassette. We have a video of this movie. Oh, you have also in the library. Lucky you. So.
Is any of this music broadcast on Voice of America to the Soviet Union?
Yes, from time to time, yes. And I participated in some of the programs, interview. We perform songs of these poets, singers in Oberlin with my students. And we did a musical play based on Vlad Akujava's life and poems, and it was broadcast to the Voice of America. Parts of our plays where we used Akujava, Galich, Vysotsky, and other songs. Yes.
How much of the VOA is available? How many people can hear that in the Soviet Union?
It's not very easy to listen to the Voice of America because it's jammed. It's being jammed now. Since the establishing of Solidarity, they resumed jamming. Liberty, they have been jamming all the time. Svoboda, the state of liberty. They don't jam Canada, Radio Canada. But, people are so inventive. I knew one engineer in Leningrad, an excellent electrical engineer. He invented a special device, to overcome jamming. You know that the Soviet Union spends more money for jamming than for its own broadcast. It's very expensive. It's very expensive. I think it's time to go on to the second concert. Thank you very much for your attention.